All right. So let's get started. Probably start with an introduction. Let me see if this is working here. There we go. Cool. Hi, I'm Ravi. Nice to meet y'all. I want to tell you a little bit about myself before we jump into the whole domain of UX and corporate work and consulting and the kind of things that you may end up doing in your career. So I'm an avid cyclist. It's one of my interests. I love cycling. I've been cycling since I was a teenager, used to race, and I love long distance riding. I also love coffee, and often I'm riding from like coffee shop to coffee shop. I like to have a cortado or a cappuccino, something that's going to sit light on me, but give me a little energy to keep going. I used to be a DJ for about 10 years. I still have a pretty significant vinyl collection, about 1,000 records, scratch, house music, all that good stuff. You're like, why is this VP talking about DJing? Yes, let's continue. I was an artist early in my career, and this is a drawing I did as a copy of Da Vinci. I can't take credit for the aesthetics, but is evidence that I know how to draw. And I love pizza. I'm a pizza maker. This is a photograph of one of my pizzas, a margherita pizza, Neapolitan style, delicious, nice to look at, lovely to eat, and it brings people together. I'm a little obsessed with pizza, guys. And anyone that knows me maybe as much as a pizza maker as a UX designer. And so these are all my pizzas, right? These aren't pictures from Google. And I've made thousands of pizzas over the last few years. And as you can see, I just like the pizza as a product, as something that's designable, right? You've got the dough, you've got the ingredients, you've got the aesthetics of it, and you've got that experience of tasting it. And all these things are, for an artist or a creative, a beautiful like field of opportunities. But the other part of pizza making that I learned to love was running a business, because that gave me even more opportunities to think about my inventory. How do I price my product? How do I let people know that I exist and I have a service to offer, right? Social media. How do I use social media and market myself? Do I care about my revenue, or am I just doing this for the love? And what is my margin, right? There's a business aspect to this that's as intriguing as the design and creative aspect. That made me really hungry right now because I haven't had breakfast, guys. So I've talked about all these things that I'm interested in, and there's a lot more that makes up like me as a personality, having a point of view of the world and how I spend my time. I'm not going to read through this whole grid of stuff, but you kind of get the idea. I'm into a lot of different things. How is that relevant? Well, UX isn't really just about what you do. It's not about just making wireframes and doing research and building prototypes and working with clients and all that kind of stuff. It's a way of thinking, right? It's about how you see the world, how you connect dots, how you analyze, and how you process all that through a design thinking mindset to create solutions. Make sense? Yeah. Do people kind of relate to some of these words that I believe make up the UX persona? Kind of raise your hands if you do. Does anyone relate to this stuff? Phew. You're like in the right place and you're studying the right stuff, because there's a great career path ahead of you. And this isn't strictly just UX. It could be service design, it could be architecture, it could be many other things, product design, et cetera, right? Industrial design. But usually those places where you are interested about the world, you connect dots, and you have an outlet to solve problems. A little OCD. Little OCD? Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So this weird mashup represents me. When I was about 12, 13 years old, I used to program on that computer. I have dated myself, I understand that. And I used to have a palette because I painted. And these two things, just like in your brain, you have a right and left side to your brain, they can coexist. I mean, Einstein was a violin player, right? So you don't have to be so creative that you're not analytical, and you don't have to be so analytical and engineering oriented that you think of yourself as not being creative. The two things can absolutely coexist. So as you're going down your career path, this level of diversity in your thinking and adaptability to the world around you is actually an asset. I've thought about myself as potentially being a bit ADHD. And I go, well, let me put that on my cape, because that's what's going to help me fly through my career, you know? I think we do have a lot of distractions in the world, but that's an opportunity to kind of process it and find tools to make something beautiful out of it. So I asked myself this question, especially being an executive at a software company: who let me in here? Because I started as an artist. I have my bachelor's and my master's in painting. And when I graduated, I couldn't pay the rent. And so I found an opportunity to be a digital arts professor. So I was teaching Photoshop. I was teaching HTML, I was learning it, and I taught animation as I read the book. But I kind of figured it out, right? Adaptable, creative, hardworking. I just kind of figured it out. And that experience got me into being a web designer and a project manager. Some of these skills I was learning along the way. One of the oil and gas companies I worked at had a project management course that was unbelievable, so great. And I'm so thankful for having had that opportunity to do that, because it served me well throughout my career. Yeah, I went from art school to oil and gas in about 2 years. It was a bit of a transition. And then I got into consulting. I became a senior UX designer, did some projects for Microsoft, for HP, for other companies. Took me overseas for a little bit. I will say I got burned out in 1 year, so it didn't last very long, but I got some amazing exposure doing market research, usability testing, product design at that time. Then finally made it, became a manager, because I wanted to be a manager for a long time. And this will be a question we ask ourselves as we go through this talk, is like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I thought being a manager or being an executive meant that I made it, but it was really a huge shift in my career. Because when you go higher up in the ranks, you do less of what got you there in the first place. And you need to learn to let go and delegate to others. But that led me into becoming a senior manager at other companies. This was a $23 billion service company, actually a trash company, not very sexy. I don't like to say that very often, but let's be honest. And that's just where I met my colleague, Germain. And he will tell his story about his career growth as well. And I think we actually grew a lot together, because we also went to the next company together as well, where I became a director of user experience. And again, I felt like, good, I'm finally getting these titles I want. But with that came a shift in what my work was and what my personal mission was and my mission for my team. And today I'm vice president of design and user experience at Pros. I'm not vice president of user experience, a design user experience, because where we are now at our company, we actually look at how we can use design to influence all kinds of business processes across the company, how we do training, how we do customer support potentially, how we design our sales presentations and do our demos. Like, we're getting into a lot of different areas where design can still have an incredible impact. And for me, after doing this for about 25 years, just doing UX and usability and information architecture is not so exciting. And I think folks like us have a lot more to offer. So it's given me and my team great opportunities for growth. So one slide and one slide only about Pros, because you're kind of wondering, well, what is Pros? Pros is an enterprise software company. We're an AI company. We deal with very, very massive data sets that other companies basically expose to us, so we can kind of read them, look at historical trends around their pricing and revenue, and project to them kind of where they're going if they take our recommendations, so they can make millions and millions more dollars with a small investment in our software. So it's basically a pricing and revenue optimization software. Okay, kind of makes sense. It's like working with a financial advisor to take your investment and make more than you could do on your own. It's a tool for that. When I joined Pros 10 years ago, 11 years now, we were kind of at a crossroads. And that's why I joined, because the UI was super outdated. It was still built in Flash. It looked really old school. And they recognized that user experience was the way to move forward, that we could gain a bigger market opportunity because we could appeal to a broader market that cared about UX, that cared about efficiency and making their user base, which is their employees, more effective. If they use the tools the right way, they could bring more ROI to the company, right? And our competitors were doing this. So that gave us a reason to exist at Pros. And that's when Germain joined. He told me about it and said, ooh, this does look a really interesting opportunity. I met the folks there and I said, yeah, I'm signing up for this, but help us help you. We need to build this type of a team. We need this type of space. We need beautiful whiteboards like you guys have here at UH. We were admiring the whiteboards earlier. Like, ooh, these are silky. They're really nice. And so we need these tools. We need screens. We need our Post-it notes. And we also need investment in our practice so that we can be successful. And that's why we joined. So when you get into career progression, I didn't know. Remember that little diagonal slide where my career was progressing? You know, with an art degree, I could never have predicted that 20 some years down the road, I would have gotten the same title my dad got. My dad was a vice president in the engineering company. Strangely enough, he was actually the chief of engineering. And I remember growing up, going to his office, and back then they had like drafting tables. And so people were drawing mechanical parts. And I saw my dad just kind of bearing down, doing all this hard work, managing this team. But he just seemed so corporate and kind of out of touch with where I was as an artist that I never would have seen him as like a guiding light in my professional career. And it turns out that when I got into management, I used to call my dad up all the time. And then one day it just clicked. What they're doing at these drafting tables is the exact same thing we're doing at computers. We're modeling experiences, and we're very conceptual about how we do it, and very technical. So then I realized, oh, I'm just like my dad. It's kind of strange. How did that happen? Damn it. I was trying to piss him off all these years, and then I became him, you know? And so he was the vice president, I was the vice president, and I did not see that happening. So what kind of made my career progress? So this conversation is going to sound like it's about me, but I would like you guys as students and other audience members online, maybe if you have like a notebook, to take down these questions and ask yourself these questions, because this part of self-awareness will help you actually progress. I do a lot of career mentoring, and a lot of it sounds like psychotherapy, but it really is about understanding yourself, so you can understand the world around you and how you can interact with it. So the first part was understanding my motivations. Coming from a design background, actually print design and kind of an aesthetic background, you think that the reason I was doing this is because I just love design. That doesn't take you too far, actually. You need to love other things too. What I realized is I loved mastering new skills. I liked UX because it was a new skill set. It gave me some new challenges. And it allowed me to start at a very beginner level and see the challenge ahead of me and kind of bear down, lean into it, and master these skills little by little, right? Because the process of UX is actually pretty cool. You know, it's a really cool, fascinating process. I think that's why you all are here or are online. You know that there's just a lot of intrigue in this process. The other was, I knew for me personally, I love teaching. I used to teach at the University of Houston. I taught prior to that, and I was always teaching drawing. Then I got into teaching Photoshop and web design, and I just love teaching. That's one of the reasons I'm here talking to you all today. I just really love it. I enjoy it. And I wanted to influence broadly because when I get passionate about something, I want to influence others into my passion. It was true when I was a DJ. It's true as a pizza maker. It's true as a UX person. Creating a tribe is important to me too, because when I want to get people interested in what I'm interested in, you naturally create a community around you. Like with my pizza community, it's like more than 1,000 people, and some of it's global. You know, I have friends in Australia and England and Mexico who are pizza makers as well, we all kind of chat online. So that was something that motivated me. And it's strange because I'm a bit of an introvert, which you don't need to believe right now, it's fine. But I am a bit of an introvert, but connecting with people one-on-one is how you kind of build that tribe out. Growing others means a lot to me. It's something I've been doing throughout my career, mentoring and growing others. And then, let's be honest, compensation mattered. I told you earlier I couldn't pay my rent. So we do need to survive. It is a job. And the title mattered to me because we all are human beings. We all have egos. And your title, you know, when you start out as a UX designer one, you might go, God, I want to be a senior person because it's going to make me feel better about myself, how others perceive me, how I feel about myself. So let's be honest about that. It's on the list, it's just not at the top of the list. Okay. I want to pause for a second because my esteemed colleague is here. Is your mic hot? Yeah. I would love to hear Germain's kind of perspective as well on like what motivates you.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see your list because I think, you know, we all have our own motivations and it's often different. So like Ravi actually hired me. He was the first person to give me a shot in UX design, right? So I started out as like a web designer, very similar to Ravi. Also, this is very for us old school people. You know, they didn't have UX design early on. It was all about web designers. So a lot of my motivation came from I just really love interacting with teams of people and really working with people. So for me, like my number one motivation is actually being successful with the team of people and like having a goal and actually like knocking it out the park, right? That's what really drives me within my career. It also is one of the reasons why I haven't went the management path. I have stayed more of the IC role because I actually really love doing the work. And I had a very early experience of being a manager and I just didn't like it. It wasn't something that motivated me. So like for me, my main motivation, like I said, is working with the team, actually being a part of that energy of a group, you know, being successful with the group is one of my main motivations. And then I think, you know, Robbie has the compensation and title. For me, compensation is actually also important, but title is not as important for me, right? So I'm somebody that's like, I'm about the team and I love being a part of the team. So not as high on my list. But it's definitely important. Like we all need to get paid. We all need to buy stuff for our kids and family and all that good stuff. So it's definitely important. And then also like Robbie, I really enjoy growing others and working as a mentoring people and helping people kind of grow their careers. So mine is a little bit different and we're all, you know, different with our motivations. But to Robbie's point, it's all about understanding yourself, having that awareness so you can actually move the way that you need to move within your career. And you can't really do that until you've kind of answered these questions about motivation. So really, really important thing to do. And I think even for me, like looking back at that, like, oh, what are my motivations now in this stage of my career? So it's like one thing that you continue to do as you move through your career and progress. So
it's funny, you and I have had these conversations around moving into management for many years. I know it's a conversation I've had with many of my team members because they feel that the only way to move up is to top out as a senior or principal designer and then get into management. But you don't have to always choose management. I'm going to show you some other career paths that will allow you to still have growth without getting into management. You actually have an MBA.
I do, yeah, which is very strange. It's really, you know, doesn't make sense for a UX designer really to have an MBA, but for me, it's one thing that I really enjoy, a passion I have is to really understand business, right? And as you kind of move up your chain, it's really important to understand more business principles. So for me, as you know, I like to grow and learn stuff. I thought like an MBA would be really good to kind of push me in a new direction and kind of continue on with my learning path. So yeah, very strange for you know somebody in a UX role to be an MBA, but
and you got me, I'm an executive and I need an MBA. So could I borrow yours? Because I mean, you know, you would have thought that it would take an MBA to get to this role. It's not always the case. I think we are both proof that you can kind of spin your own path. You can always do that. So stick around for maybe a few more slides here. So because I think this is like this slide especially is an interesting dialogue for the two of us. Willingness to take opportunities. So again, we talk a bit about self-awareness. One of the things that's that drives us the most is fear. And fear can drive you to inaction or action, right? It can go either way, actually. So sometimes you'll get an opportunity, someone will tell you about a job and you go, "Ooh, that sounds interesting, but I don't think I'm prepared for it." That's an opportunity there. The door's open. You might not feel prepared. You might have a little imposter syndrome. You might feel you need to learn a few more things. And all that is a bunch of excuses that your ego is telling you. And it's all driven by fear. But what I found, for some reason, I had the fear of missing out and failing and not taking opportunities. So every time a door would open, I would always walk through. Sometimes I'd walk back out, but I'd always walk through and investigate and see what that's all about. And that has served me very well. I'm kind of curious about your experience on the opportunity side of things.
Yeah, this is a really great one. For me, my safe space was actually working with Ravi, right? So I worked with him for 7, 8 years, 2 different companies, and we had a really good working relationship. But then it was like, okay, what am I gonna do with my career? And one of the things that I really wanted to push myself is to kind of do this on my own, right? Like he was the one that kind of helped me get where I was, but I wanted to prove it to myself that I could do it on my own. So it was like, leaving the house concept for me, it's like I wanted to leave home. And for me, like I had this opportunity that came up, and it gave me the opportunity to actually push myself into this, uncomfortable space of being by myself and trying to figure out how to bring UX along within this organization. So I took the opportunity. I did have to leave working with Ravi, but it was something that actually pushed me in my career. It gave me this great experience of being the UX of one in this organization where it was literally on me. I had to figure out everything and kind of grow the UX practice. So it's a great opportunity for me, but I think it's really important to kind of push yourself, and especially in technology, right? Because the people that are the ones that grow in these roles are the ones that are willing to be uncomfortable. And oftentimes new opportunities can feel extremely uncomfortable. So like in my mind, like if you're really someone that wants to grow and move throughout and progress your career, like being okay with like taking these opportunities and being uncomfortable is like really important. And for me, it's kind of got me to the place I am now, is working at Google. And when I tell people that, everybody's like, "Oh, wow, you work at Google." And again, it kind of plays into this idea of taking these opportunities that come along, and being okay with being uncomfortable.
I mean, you didn't leave pros to go to Google. You left
No.
Amazon to go to Google.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we had this conversation. He's like, "I don't know. Should I do this?" I said, "It's Google." But wait a second, but you're at Amazon and you worked really hard to get here, and maybe you shouldn't just leave now because it might look like you're not committed. You're at Amazon for how long?
About 2.5 years.
Yeah, so that was right on the edge where I said,
Right.
it's okay. It's okay. It's almost, we'll round up to 3. But if you're leaving opportunities every 6 months, you should have a conversation with yourself about that too. That means you're having trouble committing and showing that. And it does over time not look so good on your resume. But it's good that you left pros, because you're working at pros and it was a comfortable position and you were killing it. And I had to support you on the way out, but when you do that, you also create an opportunity for someone else, and look where you're at now.
Yeah.
I definitely I super admire Germain, because I want to work at Google. So playing to my strengths. So this is interesting. If you've ever had conversations about strengths versus weaknesses, some people they hold themselves back because they get too focused on where they're weak. Avoid that. Think about your strengths the way that Batman thinks about all the things on his tool belt and all those cool things he can do with his mind and his tools, because he doesn't have laser vision. He can't fly and nobody cares, right? That's Superman, So think about that, kind of what makes up your superpowers, and lean into that and present yourself. That's part of your brand. As you can see, we have a working relationship. We have a network. I have a network with Zach and with Liz. We have lots of friends in common. And so if you're a little scared of building your network because you're not a people person or something like that, well, do it the way I do it. Go to LinkedIn, connect with people, chat with them. It's so much easier than it was 25 years ago to connect with people online and build your network. There's so many things you can do to do that. Google, to get to Google, I think you have a story around your network.
Yeah, so basically the way I made it to Google was this point in itself, right? So I met somebody at a UX conference probably about 12 years now. Me and him both were just UX designers at the time. Chatted it up with them. You know, we did everything in this conference together. It was like a week-long conference. We became kind of fast friends, right? So during that conference, you know, exchanged information, kept in contact with each other over the years. And then just so happened, he was a manager at Google. He was building his team. And of course, what do? You look for people that you feel like you have, a relationship with and want to bring those people in. He reached out to me, and that's how I got to Google. So, the short story, the gist of the story is like this: building networks, building relationship with people. It's really important. You never know how it's going to play out over your career, right? This is the main reason I made it to Google. I mean, I live in Houston. Google doesn't really hire remote because of COVID. They opened things up, and now I was able to take advantage of the opportunity. So, if it wasn't for me just being who I am, I love talking to people. If I hadn't talked to him at this particular conference, I probably wouldn't be at Google right now. So, it's a great story that kind of shows the importance of really making sure you're building your network. And I think really the cool thing about it is somebody that I was actually friends with, right? It wasn't just because he knew me and he knew I could design or create stuff in Figma. It's because we had a relationship. So, and we still have a relationship to this day. So it's a really important point there to make sure you're focusing on that.
Yeah, likewise, my good friend Germain, who was working for me at my previous company, left. I was a little heartbroken, except for the fact that he brought me to the next company. Then he left again. And here we are telling the story. No, it's all good. But so really like lean into this if you're uncomfortable. Let me ask a just kind of show of hands of who has a LinkedIn profile. Okay, very good. Keep them up for a second. Whose LinkedIn profile is complete and up to date? You have endorsements, skills, maybe presentations you've posted in this year you've posted. Okay, those things are really important. So if someone has questions about like how to get a job, how do you interview, we don't look at resumes so much. We look, especially for designers, we look at portfolios and we start at your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your business card. Okay, LinkedIn is your business card. So make sure it's up to date. And LinkedIn makes it easy. They gamify it. They tell you what percent your profile is complete. And we're in the world of AI. It's very easy to write a good profile nowadays. Just, kind of word vomit a lot of stuff into ChatGPT, let it organize it for you, paste it into your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you have a clear about statement there so I can figure out and disposition who you are amongst these other, I'm going to say 250 candidates, because that's how many candidates we had apply just for a recent internship. An internship, 250 candidates. So it's really critical that you present yourself really well on LinkedIn and then have a strong portfolio. What is a strong portfolio? I don't know, go search on Google. What's a strong portfolio for UX designer? And go find UX designer portfolios and try to emulate what you see your competition doing, okay? I think I have two more points here. We'll move on to actually after this slide, I just want to pause and take some questions if we've got some. As you've heard, I've talked a little bit about like psychology and self-awareness, and you can look in the mirror and try to have a conversation with yourself. And the only thing that's going to prevent you from going very deep is your own ego that doesn't want to be very honest with yourself. We are a little fragile sometimes, and it's hard to be honest with ourselves sometimes. We want to feel good, but to grow, you got to deal with a little bit of pain, and it's good to ask for your colleagues' feedback. I remember Germain asked me for some feedback as he was prepping for an interview a few years ago, and I kind of gave him feedback, and that's why you killed it, because you're open to the feedback, open to growing and taking it from someone you trusted. So find people in your world who can give you feedback, take that. All of my one-on-ones with all my team members have an agenda. And in the agenda, it says, actively ask for feedback. And I'm a manager. I don't like it being a one-way street. So the next line says, also give me feedback. Just be tactful, that's all. Because the way you give feedback when you're trying to push somebody is different when you're trying to give feedback to advise somebody. So when I give my boss feedback, he's chief product officer, I'm not trying to tell him how to do his job. I'm not trying to mentor him. I'm trying to advise him, tell him kind of what's happening in the organization he might not be aware of, and to give him just feedback in terms of blind spots he might not be aware of. But he's not my employee. I'm not mentoring him. But when a boss or someone senior to me is giving me feedback, I want the mentoring. I want the challenge. So just think about how you give feedback. And if you have trouble with feedback, that is an important area to work on. Last point here is about avoiding limiting beliefs. Has everyone heard of fixed mindset versus growth mindset? Yeah, some folks have. This is really good. So fixed mindset is when you're comfortable and you kind of know what box you're in, and feels really comfortable in that box, and you don't want to push outside of that because you have all the answers inside your box. And you don't need to look outside of the framework you have and what you already know. A growth mindset starts with this premise that there's opportunity to grow. I might need to change the way I think. I might need to get more information, new information about the world, and I'm gonna have to challenge my thinking, maybe get uncomfortable and transform in some way. Being that new person sounds fantastic. The process of getting there sucks, right? Because you have to change. And folks that have fixed mindsets tend to not be like innovators. And if you're a designer and you pride yourself on creativity, you have to have a growth mindset. Because otherwise, every new design problem that comes, problem that comes your way, you tend to solve it the same way you did in the past, because that's going to guarantee results. Problem is, those results won't be optimal. They won't be optimal. You've got to approach things in a different way each time. So I would say fixed versus growth mindset is something to Google. Carol Dweck is an author of a book on this, DWYCK. Definitely dive into that a bit. The other one around limiting beliefs is when people go, I'm super tuned to this. People go, oh, I could never do that. Oh, I'm not good at that. Oh, that looks really hard. That is a good indicator that someone is limiting themselves from changing, growing, trying something hard. And that will guarantee, if you're a junior designer today, you're going to stay a junior designer. I mean, I had one colleague I worked with 20 years ago, and he's still at that company. And every 5 years, he calls me up and he talks to me about career growth. And he's a lovely guy, but that's kind of where he's fixed. I've seen folks like Germain and many other folks I've worked with grow, because they have that internal dialogue that says, yeah, I can do it. It's going to be hard, but I can do it. I'm going to try that. So just to add one word to your sentence, when you say, oh, I'm not good at that, just say yet. If you change that, you've opened up your mind to taking those first steps to get better at it. My first pizzas were terrible. They're edible because they're pizza and they're tasty still, but they were like really terrible. They're embarrassing. But I like looking back at those because they show me how much I grew. I like looking back sometimes in my portfolio to show myself how we used to do it in 1998 and in 2005 and how we do it now. So keep track of that. So ask yourself honestly, what motivates yourself in your career? These are the questions back to all of you. What are your strengths or superpowers? How can you market yourself? How can you lean into those? Do you believe in your potential? Do you believe in yourself? Or do you have limiting beliefs? Where do your limiting beliefs come from? Did people talk to you that way? Oh, you're no good at that. You can't do that. You know, what happened? Did you embarrass yourself one time? Like, get into that stuff and find out what it is that's driving that internal dialogue. Because you can't have career growth, all that career growth we talked about, if you are holding yourself back. When did you last ask for feedback? Have you built a healthy network? And did you take new opportunities, or do you talk yourself out of them? And these things are here because I've seen this with hundreds of people I've mentored over the last 15 years, right? So can we pause here for a second? I want to see if there's any questions online or questions from the audience that we could take. Yes, Quinn.
Hello, I'm Quinn. My question is, this is for both of you guys. Is there something that you wish you would have done at the beginning of your UX career?
Wow. So it's a tough answer, because when I started, UX was, I don't know, did it exist? I don't know.
No.
It existed in Silicon Valley, so it didn't really.
Usability, they didn't even call it
Yeah,
UX, yeah.
it's a very weird and different time than what it is now. So I think my answer kind of goes back to, I think it really goes back to like really understanding some of the methods a little bit better. Like I learned on the job mainly because this guy, but I didn't know anything other than like I could make a good looking website. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have the knowledge of UX. I didn't really have the experience of doing a lot of the stuff and like going through the process of doing research before I actually had to do it without him. So for me, like it was really about the knowledge and the skills. I wish I would have had more ability to actually learn what UX actually is and not actually learn on the job. And I know that's kind of I feel like I'm punting a bit on the answer, but it really is kind of more tied to like how I came into the career. So I don't know if Robbie has something better.
Well, I have something different, I'm sure. So ask the question one more time so I can really dial into it.
Is there something that you wish you would have done at the beginning of your UX career?
Yeah. Trying not to give a half-hour answer on this one because there's so many things, guys. There's so many things. One thing I just want to set one kind of premise that's different. I went to art school, so it's different. So I didn't have projects, group projects where kind of I learned skills that would have helped me in my corporate career. So early part of my career, I needed to learn project management. I needed to learn estimates, figure out how to scope things, how to work with others, be comfortable presenting. So I didn't have those basic skills. I worked in a studio, for myself. It was very different. So putting that aside for a second, the number one thing that I look back at throughout most of my career is that I wish I had built relationships better. And UX people falsely credit themselves for being empathetic. Yes, yeah. Right. So, I mean, I interviewed someone just yesterday who, by the way, got the job. So congratulations to them. Amazing. I think they'll find out later today. I hope they're not watching. So amazing. So the thing is, people, when you ask them, what's a core characteristic of UX people, they say empathy. And they usually get a glow when they say that. You know what I'm saying? They like credit themselves for being empathetic and being able to put themselves in other people's shoes. But 99% of the time, they're not really doing it. We're basically saying we're imagining what it might be like to be the stick figure in our mind that's behind a computer clicking through our screens. So that's one of the reasons we do research, right? To get really close to them and see a person, observe a person, which starts to make you empathize more and more and more. And we get pretty good at that. We do our personas, which then starts to pull us away from the actual individual person again. And then we do requirements and it pulls us away even more. The place where we lack empathy, I hate to say this, is with our colleagues. I sometimes see UX people compete with each other a bit or get, a little hurt about something. I see UX people and product managers and engineers struggle with each other and, have competing agendas instead of seeing that you're all part of one team. And I see that we lack that empathy because we're judgmental. We bring our ego into the picture. And as much as we have to pat ourselves on the back for being empathetic to our end users and advocating for end users, we have to start at home. Damn it, we have to start at home. So I'm a vice president today, and I will tell you something that I feel like I held myself back for many, many years. Because early in my career, I always felt frustrated by managers, directors, and executives who didn't get it. They didn't get what we all know here. They didn't get it. And so I would kind of demonize them in my mind and blame them for not letting us do what we knew was right. Because I didn't empathize with what their job was. They're actually making sure that the business is running so we can have salaries. Should be very grateful for that. And what does it take to do that? There's a great book called The Leadership Pipeline. You could probably even find a summary if you don't read the whole thick book. It's an amazing book. And one of my bosses gave that to me when I joined Pros, actually, because he wanted me to be very clear what the job of a director was versus a manager. I was a manager prior, then a director versus a vice president versus a chief officer. It's important, I think, to empathize with your executives so that you can figure out later how to talk to them. And I wish I had learned that earlier on, because I held myself back because I talk like a UX nerd, you know? I was always talking about all the proofs and here's what the research said, and let me walk you through all these steps and pull you guys from up here way down into our weeds. It's a great way to alienate people, you know, is to pull them down into your weeds. So if you're going to present to folks, like I care a lot, I'm talking to students today, and I want to talk to you in a way that's kind and empathetic, that's helpful for you so we can have some real engagement. So I want you to think about that word empathy a lot, and having empathy for your, I'm going to say, brothers and sisters that you work with, you know, and also work with here. Because when you have that, like what's coming from a place of love, then you can start to really put yourselves into their position and recognize that chief officer carries a lot of burden. Don't demonize them. Try to understand them, and then connect your language of design into a way that connects to them. So they go, oh, now I care about design because I understand how this drives our business value. Told you it's gonna be a long answer.
Oh, can I add
Please.
soft
please.
skills? Oh my God, as
Oh
a
my
UX
God.
designer, your soft skills are so important for success, right? So understanding how to work with other people. Do you have self-awareness? Some of the stuff Robbie talked about there, it's hard to know you need that stuff before you get into the role, but the more you can understand like dynamics of working with team members and things like that, it's really important. Because oftentimes as a IC UX designer, you have no power. So you have to influence, you have to use a lot of different ways of getting people to be on board with what you're selling. So soft skills are really important for sure.
Yeah. I didn't have any.
Yes.
I mean, in the interviews, this is very true. If you get an interview with me or anyone on my team, you're already qualified. I rarely look at portfolios or talk about your resume in an interview. The last thing I want to do is talk about UX in an interview. Isn't that weird? It's because I'm trying to figure out how you work with teams. Do you take feedback well? Are you coachable? Do you have potential? I don't need superstars. I already have superstars. I want to grow superstars on my team. So it's a lot about your personality and do we want to work with you? You know, have you developed those soft skills over the years? Or do you have a chip on your shoulder? You know, are you trying to prove something to me? You know, we're really assessing your professionalism and your ability to build relationships. Yeah. Another question before we move on? Yeah, please.
Hi. So related to the career building and grow, there's this question that says that what you guys think are the real reasons why some folks have a rough time having like landing into UX jobs and positions?
So one time, why do we think that?
Some people have like difficult time landing into
Difficult time. Yeah.
UX kind of jobs.
I'll let Germain take this one. Actually, you've been in more interviews in the last decade than I have. So yeah, I'm kind of curious what your experience is and what you think leads to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you're asking why do people now have a hard time getting into UX? I honestly think a lot of it just has to do with the market, the job market right now, right? So after COVID, most of the companies overhired, right? And so now we're in this kind of very weird space for UX. So I think it's another thing that you have to really take in consideration is the cycles of industry, right? So you know, there's Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and these cycles, they change, right? So at certain points, the job market is really good. Certain points it gets bad. So it's some of that also, right? We're just kind of in that situation now where, you know, companies aren't investing as much, they're not hiring as much. So it's harder to get in, right? So you have these multiple things happening that's kind of creating this space that we're in. So you have to be conscious of that. I think is really important because, I mean, what can you really do about these larger things happening, right? It's not much we can do about it. We have to just understand the situation so we can figure out what we need to do. But outside of that, I think too, one of the bigger problems that we face as a UX industry and like how we've sold ourselves over the years, I think it's kind of affecting us, right? And so now companies, since they're pulling back and not spending as much money, they feel like, you know, UX isn't as important. So again, all these things are kind of playing into it. So in my opinion, I think, you know, it's multiple factors that we're dealing with right now. And then, you know, these companies are just laying off tons of people. So there's a lot of people out there that's looking for jobs. So it just feels like it's a lot of things just layering on top of each other that's creating the current situation. I think, you know, the key is to try to stay positive within it all. And, you know, I think that some of the points Robin made about networking, I think if you can put yourself in situations where you're actually, you know, able to meet people face to face, those are maybe some couple of strategies to kind of help in the situation. But like I said, I think it's a lot of different things that are causing the kind of crazy market at the current point right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. There is also more UX talent out there than I've ever seen. Like, you know, people are going through programs like this and many other programs. So there's a lot of competition out there. So one thing to consider, and I think we can get into the next part of this presentation. You might thought we were done. Sorry, guys, we got to keep talking some more. We have some more topics to talk about because we got what's I shape versus T shape. Let's talk about that in a second. But it may help to consider some of your adjacencies, because if I've got a UX designer who also has, let's say, a product management certification, project management certification, and do some engineering, brings that knowledge into the UX role, they're much more interesting to me. But I don't want them to do all those things. But knowing that they have that experience tells me that they can probably interact better with their colleagues and work as a successful product team together. Yeah. So look at your adjacencies too. So what doesn't work in developing kind of your career is just talking about career development like we're doing today and not taking any action. So I mentor a lot of people, and I can tell you the ones immediately that are going to do well and the ones that aren't. Okay. When I'm mentoring, someone's taking notes, I already know they're going to do well, right? Because at a minimum, they know it. The information getting is valuable. In addition to that, they're telling me that it's important to them, right? So just that act of taking notes when you are with somebody, watch everyone start taking notes right now, but when you're with someone who's trying to help you is incredibly important indicator that they're going to do well, because it kind of starts with that, like taking the value in, capturing it, and then the next step is some follow through. So most of those folks who I can tell they're generally a bit type A, or they take the career development very seriously, they then follow up with an email, and or they'll ask, could I meet with you again? So already right there, they're taking an action, right, on that. So we haven't even gotten into them applying for a job or updating their resume, just simple thing of taking notes and doing a follow-up with me. That means they're going to keep doing those kinds of follow-ups. So, you know, a house is built brick by brick, and like, think of it that way. What are all the little baby steps I can take that if I do them regularly, you'll have an amazing career ahead of you. And there's so many things you could do for follow through. So I just touched on one. Really, just the taking notes and then taking some action. When you know you need to work on your resume, go work on your resume. I'm mentoring somebody right now, and I gave them some tips on how to improve their resume. Asked them for a copy of their resume. I took it to ChatGPT, helped rewrite it a bit, put it into a new template format, and send it back to them. So I did work on their behalf. Now, if they don't take the next step, and apply for jobs, update their LinkedIn like I suggested and all that, then they're not going to move forward. So you guys have to take responsibility for your own growth. So it's uncomfortable, I get it. You have to lean into it. Any growth is uncomfortable because you've got to go through some pain to then grow. Going to the gym, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. It hurts. And you need to rest afterwards too. That's part of it as well. Give her some time to rest and take in the growth and not just burn out. Okay. All right, finding your voice. So we're going to get into like this, the last kind of part of the presentation. We're okay on time? Yeah, cool. All right. So I like it being more interactive. Otherwise you all fall asleep on me and I'm talking to myself again. So finding your voice. So when you're starting your career, you really don't have any expertise. You're just kind of familiar. Prior to stepping in to college and choosing your career path, you just had familiarity around this area, maybe some basic skills, but you start to go up the ranks, up this ladder, climbing as you develop more and more skills, get into seniority, perhaps become some type of a leader. It could be a principal, that type of a leader, you know, or it could be like a manager type of leader, but some type of leader. And as you do that, you kind of find your voice because when you start out, you're a very tactical thinker. You could talk to other designers about design, about information architecture, about development and all that. But as you go up, you start to think very strategically in what you talk about, what you care about, how you talk to others, who you can talk to, starts changing. When I started, I had no experience public speaking other than speaking to my students, and that was comfortable. When I went to the corporate environment, I was just terrified. But I could talk with my team members because we could talk about CSS and HTML and pixel pushing and all that. That was easy. Go to lunch and talk about that. But when I had to talk to an audience at work, I just got really nervous inside, rightfully so. But along the way, you will develop your voice. And I put this out there because you should go easy on yourself and recognize it is a process and you should look forward to failing only so you can learn from that and not repeat your failures over and over and over. You need to market yourself as a UX person because if you don't, you become invisible. So I am sure that in your classwork, you know, project work, you have to present to others. And that's probably the most comfortable thing to do, even though it is uncomfortable. But imagine presenting to an audience at work and you've got your boss there, maybe some of his peers. That's pretty uncomfortable. Now, if you just talk like a designer to other designers, you're going to alienate them. So when you think about these different audiences, these are all very distinct audiences. There's different types of forums to talk to them. In each forum, even if you're talking about the same thing, you have to adjust your dialogue. Okay. So imagine I'm going to share with you a couple different forums and ways to talk to these different audiences. Imagine you're just talking about the same thing every time. How would you adjust your dialogue to each of them? So with executive reviews, I was in executive reviews this entire week. I got 8 minutes to talk to the CEO and all other chief officers. That was it, 8 minutes. It was a really busy week. We had 20 hours of reviews. 8 hours, 2 days, 4 hours the next day. There's a lot of content they were taking in. How can I speak strategically to them so I sound relevant? Well, it's going to be very differently than how I speak to our team, completely differently. So talk about strategy. Boil down the work you do and say, does this matter? Holy crap, I can't find a way to make this relevant to the CEO. Does my job, my work have any meaning? You should ask that question. Or am I thinking about this the wrong way? And should I maybe not take the opportunity to talk to the CEO or some chief officer or a vice president? Because all I'm going to do is make an impression that I don't know how to connect, right? So really be careful. Figure out also when not to talk. If you're going to talk to the product team, talk about your research, the insights you get from the research. The product managers can make really good decisions, right? Or business analysts, they can make good decisions. And do your design reviews. You're going to look at screens, you're going to look at the design, you might look at iterations, and you could talk more in design language there, but connect to product strategy, not to business strategy, but like to product strategy, okay? UX team meetings. We've been on teams together for years, and a lot of knowledge sharing, culture building. Sometimes we don't talk about UX, we show slideshows of our latest vacation. Because what we're trying to do there is connect with other designers. You don't have to talk about design to death. You can use that to relationship build. And sometimes, like Jermaine, you went to a conference once. I remember you came back and gave a presentation to the whole team for half an hour of what you learned. So those kinds of opportunities are there as well. And project work and all that's totally cool. Engineering sessions. So when you're working with developers, talk about your design, but maybe talk about design system because they can take the design system and translate that into components that they can use. Now you're making it meaningful to that audience. Accessibility, because usually we are the ones championing accessibility, not engineers. And like, get more techie with them and meet them where they're at. Again, don't alienate people when you're talking to these audiences. Customer engagement's different. So when you're talking to customers, you really don't want to talk from the inside out. You want to talk about like things that matter to them outside of your company. Talk about research studies that will matter to them, not all of them, the ones that matter to them. Maybe the roadmap, so they know what to look forward to. Try to pull them into your methodology, talk to them about methodology, but pull them in and try to get feedback from them. It's a very different dialogue than what we're having with our executives. And then everyone else in the world, you could do newsletters, you could do videos. We have social media. We have Ascend UX Instagram, podcast, blog. I post on LinkedIn a lot, and that's to a general audience. Part of it's because I want the general audience to maybe consider working on our team one day and understand our culture and understand how sophisticated we are, even for a small company with under 20 UX researchers and designers that we're so sophisticated. You might want to join us. You might have a lot to learn as well. So makes sense now when I break it down, right? Like finding your voice at the level you're at and tailoring your conversation to the audience you're talking to. Super, super important. Otherwise, the audience falls asleep, and that is not good for your own morale. Everyone's awake, yeah? Phew, it's going really well. Challenges is finding your voice. There's a number of different challenges. I might not kind of go through all of these because you can read them. I think you're going to relate to them, but you know, we talked a lot about self-awareness. That's also connected to self-confidence, managing fear. These kinds of things are very much in the kind of psychology therapy type of world of, you know, how do you improve yourself psychologically, I would say, you know, your inner dialogue. Self-confidence, the worst thing someone can tell you is, you need to be more confident. What does that do? It makes you less confident, right? Immediately. So confidence comes with success. So just do the work you need to do, gain more and more successes, then you get more confident. I was like that with public speaking. I was just terrified. My body was just feeling it. And I would work myself into a lot of fear when I was public speaking many years ago. But after being thrown to the wolves many times, I got better at it because I survived each time. And then people would say, you know, you're a really good public speaker. I was like, oh, I'll accept that. And the next time I go speak, I'll just remember that they said that. So the confidence came from the successes. Knowing your audience, when to speak, when not to speak, creating an opportunity for yourself to speak. Zach and Liz asked me to speak today, and I said, yes, it wasn't very difficult. Just said yes to it because every audience, if you guys want me, then I love to talk to y'all. Taking feedback, accepting failure, celebrating success. So we talked about all of these except for celebrating success. So when you do have a success, tell others about it. Tell your parents. My mom is in her 70s. I still tell her when I have a success because it makes me feel good. I was a child at one point. It's okay to, you know, have your parents feel proud for you, right? Do you do that too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
For sure.
How do you celebrate your success when you get a new job?
I've been a few, so it's kind of calmed down over the years. But no, I mean, you know, go out to eat, you know, do a little party. Maybe if it depends on you, you know, going to Google, you maybe do a little bit more. So it's like, you know, it just, like you said, just, you know, go out, have a good time, and then enjoy the experience, right? Because you don't get many of them unless you're someone like me that's had a few. But you know, it's really, you know, take advantage of because you create those memories. So
Yeah, I always tell people when I give a promotion, I always say, go out to dinner, take your significant other, have a glass of wine, have some champagne, like live a little, this is your moment. And treat that as a milestone. So you don't feel like you're always just working to something. Just pause for a second and give yourself kind of a hug in a sense. This idea of imposter syndrome is universal. It has nothing to do with intrinsic like demographics. Men have imposter syndrome, not just women. Nobody can claim that we have imposter syndrome more than others. Chief officers have imposter syndrome. I know because I work with them, and they will admit that they're human beings. Doesn't matter your race or your background. I mean, there's like Oprah Winfrey probably still has imposter syndrome because of her really difficult childhood. So don't let that hold you back. That goes back to limiting beliefs. Okay, no excuses with imposter syndrome, guys. Let it go. I have imposter syndrome right now. Does that make you feel better? Okay, good. We're over it now. So finding your voice. So you looked at this totem earlier. It's in the shape of an eye. And it's really your expertise developing in one domain. And a few years ago, I had a colleague of mine who I asked, I said, like, how did you get to this level where you're now an executive and you're a consultant, you're working for Accenture, you're just kicking butt. You're like really killing it because I just feel like I'm stuck. How did you do it? She said, she was actually one of my first mentors in UX. And she said, you got to start working outside your domain and get expertise in other areas and work across the business. Otherwise, you typecast yourself. You are the UX guy, period. So what that means is when you get to a certain level of seniority, I wouldn't necessarily do this when you're junior, unless you really don't know what you want to do yet. But usually like you did development, design, UX, kind of in the early stages, right?
A little bit of product.
A little bit of product in the early stages, but you figured out, no, UX is my passion. So you went up to a senior level in UX. Principal now, principal level. So, but my point is you kind of went up right after you figured out like what you like. And then you've always told me that you're interested in product. So that's an adjacency that you can get into.
Yeah, definitely. It's again, understanding those passions, what I enjoy, and also how it helps me as a UX designer. So yeah.
Yeah. And you can do this again. Like I worked in the marketing department. I worked in instructional computing in the beginning of my career, then into a web design department, then into a marketing department, then into an IT department. And while I was a designer, I was still working in these different functions, and I learned a lot about each of those functions. And then you can sometimes do that and then move up. So you might start in training and then get into content strategy and then get into UX. There's a guy who did that, got on our team that way. There's another guy who on our team started in engineering development for many years. He always told me, I want to be on your team one day. He's on my team now, and he's a senior designer. It's pretty amazing. So that's one thing. Don't be scared of these adjacencies. Consider that, and then even consider taking a step back, going to a new domain. Maybe your manager, oh, I had somebody who's done this. Senior, yeah, I think the developer is like a senior or a lead developer. And he took a step back to be a designer 2. We have designer 1, 2, senior, lead. Took a step back to regrow his career in the UX area. It's amazing. So don't be scared of that. At pros, I see people do this all the time, move across different departments, not because they don't know what they want to do. It's because they do want to keep growing. So do that for yourself, and you can keep expanding out this way. So what that looks like is all these different types of departments in an organization and your skill set working across that. And that's what we mean by T-shaped. You're like, wow, Ravi, it took a long time to get to T-shaped. That's what I was here for. It is really, really good advice. You don't have to rush into it, but expose yourself to that and realize that there's no way to get to the top of your career, especially into executive roles or consulting roles, without getting more T-shaped. I'm going to pause there, take some more questions, and then we'll move into the kind of final area. Yes, sir. Good to see you again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember at the post office. I was was a great experience. So yeah, good to see you again. I just wanted to get kind of like a anecdote or personal experience from both of you guys where you stepped out into the deep end and did something you were like, you guys were talking about being uncomfortable and kind of growing from that. So I wanted to get a little bit of a personal experience from you guys, a time when you did that and where you grew as a designer and as a UX professional.
Can I go?
You guys are
please?
comfortable in sharing that.
I'll give you some time on this.
Appreciate
This is so easy for me. So easy for me. I was maybe 2, 3 years out of college. Remember, master's in painting. Okay, basically a hippie artist. Okay, 3 years later, I'm working in an oil and gas company, making more money than I ever expected anyone could ever pay me. It was very strange. And I was doing actually, in addition to my design work, doing development work, I was building portals on infrastructure that I'd never seen in my life before. It's very, very technical work. And I, as a matter of record, have the title, you can laugh at this if you like, IT architect. It is hilarious because I know what an architect really does. So in that, because I was architecting these web portals. The company I worked at was a multinational company, and they had organizations in Brazil, Australia, Europe, all over, and we needed to build this infrastructure that will allow for us all to be on the same network, the same basically like an intranet. And I learned how to build those portals, but it was really technical, super buggy, very complex. And then one day, my boss said, Ravi, need you to go down to Brazil 2 weeks and train the team down there on how to build their portal. Their English is so-so. And I'm thinking, yeah, my technical experience is so-so. This is not going to go well. And I had like an IBM laptop at the time, and that was buggy. So I took a second one with me. And I was really nervous because I had to build a whole syllabus for this to help teach them how to do this work. So I go to the airport. I'm in the parking lot, parking my car, and I cried my eyes out. I was so nervous. I said, this is going to go horribly wrong. They're going to find out I'm an imposter now. You know, this is going to fail. My computer's not working. And I share that with you to say, when you make it to a certain level, you still have emotions. You still have anxiety. It's okay to be vulnerable about it. And I just want you to know that you may hit a point where you have that important interview the next morning. You're freaking out a little bit about it. Calm your nervous system down, let it out if you need to let it down, because that actually lets it out. You don't carry it in you, and try to act tough, and then go do the job. And it wasn't spectacular. Kind of made it through. We had a lot of buggy stuff, and I made friends there who helped carry the knowledge transfer through, and nothing bad happened. Nothing bad at all happened. I'd just like to tell that story about how I was crying in the parking lot because it's so visual and so embarrassing, but it's true. It's okay.
So mine is actually pretty recent. Last year, I had to run a design sprint. I work for Google Cloud, and we were in a space where we were working on the vision of our product for the next 5 years or whatever. So I had to run this design sprint, and these were like all like, so they're L7s. These are equates to like somebody like Ravi in the room, right? And I've never met any of these people, right? I live in Houston, all these folks still in Silicon Valley. So I had to fly out and, didn't know any of these folks. I had to run this design sprint. And it was really terrifying, kind of like what Robbie's talking about, because these are like, not people that I work with. These are all higher ups, right? So it's a pretty terrifying experience, because you just don't know, how is it going to be somebody in the room that's, working against you, all those dynamics that come up in those situations. Google is a very interesting place culturally to work. People are extremely smart. There's probably some PhD dude in this design sprint that I'm working with, so it's just like a very intimidating experience. But it's kind of very similar to what Robbie said. It's just like putting yourself in this situation. I think preparation is always like the best thing to kind of ease your fears in some of these situations, making sure that you're like really prepared and practicing. That's something that I have to do personally because I can tend to, go off into, tangents and stuff like that. So making sure that I'm like really, really, really well prepared for the situation is usually how I ease my fears. But literally just throwing yourself in there, making sure you're ready to go and, kind of being fearless in a way, right? It's like you just gotta like, I'm gonna make this happen, just having that attitude and that spirit, I think is really important in these situations. Cause like Robbie said, there's so many times in all your career that you'll see that you're doing something that you just never done before, right? So it's like this new ground that you're pushing into, and understanding that situation is like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have it's probably gonna be a little bumpy parts of it, but I'm gonna get through it, right? So it's like, I think that's the most important thing, is just like having confidence in yourself and just like making it happen. But so I went through the sprint. It was a 3-day sprint. We actually got some really good stuff down that we're actually working on now to actually hit the roadmap. So it was quite successful, right? But it was just a pretty terrifying experience that I just pushed myself through. So I think that's the good story there for that one. So.
I'm kind of curious in the audience. It's not like you guys haven't been through these kinds of challenges where you're nervous and anxious. Does anyone have something that they do to prepare themselves when they're very anxious about, some challenge? It might be, I don't know, could be getting into a certain college, or it could be getting a job, or it could be some conversation that they have to. What do you do to kind of calm yourself down or to prepare yourself? Oh, we have the mic coming here. Sorry. The mic. Yeah, for sure. Let's pass it around.
So this is something I learned in high school. Was I do something physically to help me mentally. So I get anxious whenever I'm having to talk in front of people or meeting a whole new group of people. So I try to stand, or like, I learned, she was like, just do like a superwoman pose and then you feel better. And then I started doing that. And then I noticed I did feel more confident, or that, I mean, that can be interpreted in different ways. So people can do different things that work for them, but that's helped me in multiple instances where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm anxious about this. And then I start going like this, or just physically doing something. And then I feel so much better.
It's
That's
great.
something that's what works for me.
And that does work relatively universally, is a psychophysiological response, right? So I had a team member who had a background in acting, and he's now a manager of research. He's up in Seattle, and he saw how terrified I was about 5 years ago of giving this presentation that turned out to be an incredible success. And he gave me some acting techniques, warm-up exercises that helped me just relax my body. And so I learned before giving a presentation that I get nervous about, to do something, even if it's not those techniques, to do something to like move my body or warm my body. Today, we got to interact with folks just before giving the presentation. We didn't walk in cold and start giving a presentation. And that relationship, feeling comfortable and moving our bodies, walking around. We did, was it 3 flights of stairs to go get a bottle of water? These things help a bit. And they help distract you and stuff. So what you described, the many forms of that, very real. Do something physical that will relax your mind. You had, I think, a thought as well. What do you do to kind of relax yourself, or manage your anxiety, or prepare?
So I think for me, I have to just pretend that in the audience is like my mom. Cause like if I see like thousands of my mom, it relaxes me to like, it's just like a normal conversation between me and her. And so it's like, I know for our UX2 class, we have to present a lot. So I just like, honestly, all those people are my mom. So I'm just like, it's just like, it makes me comfortable, because if not, then I'm going to get anxiety. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to start shaking. And it's like, my skills over the time, like, especially in UX2, have gotten better with presenting, because I'm up there in front of everybody, but it was like, I was just really nervous. And I talked to my mom about it. Literally, when I left the first time, she was like, it's always that old saying of like, why don't you pretend like everyone's in their underwear or something like that? And she was like, why don't you just pretend it's just me sitting there and we're just interacting? And I was like, okay. So also too with our professor, she sits right here in the front row and it's kind of like a mom figure.
Yeah.
Kind of, because she's the mom of our UX. So I'm like looking at her and I'm like, she's like nodding her head and I'm like, okay, I got it. So it's just imagining my mom is here and it's just a normal conversation between me and her. And that's it.
I think it's wonderful. And you know, it's a valid technique because it works. It doesn't matter. You can imagine, like I'm imagining y'all are frogs right now and it helps me. No, I'm not. That's so weird. But whatever technique works, it's valid. So I think it's great. Anyone else have something you want to share, Quinn? Yeah, about, again, it's not always about anxiety, but like what you do to prepare for something you know is going to be a challenge.
I like to remind myself that people love me.
Mm,
So when we're nervous about either presenting or when we do something new or we're meeting new people, we're meeting maybe people in the corporate world and we're students, right? I think the assumption is that, okay, I'm gonna mess up, I'm gonna do horrible, and they gonna think I'm awful and they hate me. And I like try to change that belief. It's that like, okay, these people already love me, they already like me, makes me more comfortable to be myself. Like, you have to give people the chance to like you, right?
yeah. I like that. That's pretty cool, huh? I like that. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? Oh, Zach, we got one from Zach. Cool.
So most of y'all have heard me speak at some point in time throughout the last several years. And every time I get up there, I do always have this, this kind of very nervous energy when I get up and I speak. And for me, it's not that I can do something to calm myself down beforehand. It's that I can do something in the moment that helps give that energy someplace to go. I know that when I get nervous, I speak very quickly. So what I traditionally do, and how you can tell I wasn't ready to speak today, is I have something in my pocket. And it can be something as simple as a rock or a fidget or something, and I can just play with it between my fingers. So most talks I do that you'll see, I'll have my hand in my pocket. I'm just kind of messing with something in there, and that gives that energy someplace to go and gives all of that extra energy somewhere that can focus on so that the rest of my brain can focus on actually speaking.
Yeah, I love that. And the more we do these things, the more successes we will have because,
Absolutely.
right? Because you're in a more centered place. Now, if it doesn't work out, be cautious what stories you tell yourself, right? That's why I mentioned earlier, when I have multiple jobs open right now. I've done interviews throughout this week while we're also doing our business reviews. There's a lot going on in the world. And those jobs have minimum 150 applicants per role, right? Sometimes over 300, depends on the job. So if you don't get the job and you have prepared, you know you're good, negative self-talk doesn't make anything better. Just say, well, there must have been some factor. It must have been a great field. There's another one around the corner for me. Don't take it personally. I can probably reach out and ask for some feedback. I got Robbie's email. I got whoever the hiring manager's email is. I could ask for some feedback, but don't take it too personally, right? Be cautious of the stories you tell yourself, and both overly optimistic and overly negative. Just kind of be in the present as much as you can, but be cautious of that because, I mean, actors especially, right? They get rejected left and right until they get that one opportunity. And now they're doing bit parts for 10 more years until they get that one opportunity. And then we just know the ones are successes. And that's why a lot of people get into this because they think, oh, I'll be a success one day. Well, good Lord, football players, baseball players, I mean, like less than what, 0.1% of people who go into that become professionals. So you have to be comfortable with that and not take it personally. It doesn't mean you're not great. Okay. Sometimes you can also remix yourself. Like I got out of art and I invented my own career before user experience was even a domain. And before I was a DJ and I was already remixing. This is crazy. Okay, so that's possible too. So think in a very broad kind of plastic way in that sense, right? All right, so we're kind of getting to the last half hour or so. I want to get into some practical things. And maybe before I do that, any other QA online? Yeah, see the one about AI? Maybe let's hold that one for a second until the end. And I would really love to get, two of us might have an interesting dialogue in AI, but I think, any questions about where we are so far in the talk? No? Good. How are you doing? Good to see you. Some familiar faces here. It's very nice. Good. Cool. All right, let's go into it. So again, take some notes. Maybe I can work with Liz and send some pointers out after. I hadn't really planned to do that, but it's probably a good idea to take some of the big tips out of the deck and share it with you. But you're also welcome to take notes right now. So these things I'm going to put on this slide are literally what I've done with my team members over the years. I've got proof here. He will substantiate this, and he's at Google. So you might want to like pay attention. Okay, so this is very interesting. When I became a manager and I wanted to help develop people, I realized that my team members joined my team by reading a job description, doing an interview, and then knowing what job they needed to do. And every year we would do an assessment of how they did that year, and that would determine whether they get promotion or have a salary increase and all that. But it's all codified. These are the skills you need as a UX person. These are the tools you may use. And here's the extras. You can take those and put them into like a spreadsheet and rate yourself on all those things. And you can assess yourself, and you can even have somebody else assess you if you want. And not all these have to be UX skills. It could be things like photography, video editing. You don't know when these show up. My headshot was taken by one of my team members like 5 years ago. And actually my other headshots is a selfie. But the point is that team member also did a lot of video editing on her team as well. So think broadly beyond just what you consider UX. Project management's one. I don't know if you have some skills, development skills.
Yeah, project management is really important. And then product, right?
Product
Any type
management.
of product things you
Marketing.
can bring into your role. And marketing depends
Ish,
on where you are.
depends. Maybe brand development, illustration. We had someone on our team who's a great illustrator.
Engineering too.
Engineering.
It's so important, right? Because you work with
Yeah.
engineers. So if you can like talk their language, right? It
Yeah.
creates a connection with these people because you can speak their language because you know, they often are different than us.
Yes. But we love them, and then we hope they love us. So really think broadly about all these skills. For example, usability testing is a skill, or in tools. Miro is a tool you use, or Figma is a tool you use. Think about both of those. Also, pen and paper is also a tool. So think about all those very broadly. Skills could also be facilitating design sessions. Do that. You can create your own personal spreadsheet. Maybe this could be a class assignment where you create your own skills assessment. Ooh, I don't know. I'll give you that one for free. And I'm going to show you some slides that are actually screenshots of the one we used to do. Then you take that and you go, well, I have no experience in prototyping. I'm okay at graphic design. I'm really, really good at doing research. And you rate yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever skill you want to use. And then you go, ooh, these areas that are kind of weak, I want to make strong. And these other ones that are strong, I want to become an expert in. And you turn that into a development plan. You go, oh, there's this project coming up and I can literally do that. Or I have no portfolio pieces. Let me go find a company that has a website that's terrible. I'll ask them if I could do a free job for them and build a portfolio piece out of that. So get clever. There's no excuses. It's 2024. AI can help you with this. It's just a matter of if you have the drive to do it. And then you take that and you align it to your career plan. So a career plan is something that's, let's say, 1, 3, 5 years down the road. After 5 years, frankly, the world's going to change so much, I wouldn't worry about projecting too much further, okay? Excuse me. And that career plan can be inside, let's say, your current, we're going to call it a company. It might be actually your educational career plan right now. I know I want to get a master's in HFI or human factors, right? Sorry. I know that I want to get a PhD in research. So that's fine. That's your 1 to 5 year plan. You can develop that and think about milestones and goals, but also think about in terms of your skill set. What's the point in getting better at photography when you need to get better at data analysis, or data analytics, because you actually want to be a PhD in that area. So be very literal about this, okay? Align this to business strategy. So when you're in a company and you're developing a career plan, so that's what a lot of people are kind of online right now, developing a career plan, think about where your business is going. Our businesses are deep into AI. So you should think about how AI factors into the work you do as a designer, as a product marketer, as a product manager, whatever it happens to be. You should incorporate that in because AI is not going away. It's not a fad, guys, right? It's like the web. People used to think, oh, the web's like a fad. No, that's silly. Like we're constantly evolving as a civilization. These things are not going away. So think about your business strategy, how it's pivoting, and make your plan relevant to where the business is going or the business you want to go to is going. Okay. Makes sense? I know it's a little conceptual, but these will turn into documents. If you have a challenge with that, call me up, I'll help you. And then find a mentor or a sponsor. I didn't say or, I said and. That's what's on the slide. And there's a reason it's and, because they have two different jobs. A mentor can be a teacher. Sometimes a mentor can be a boss, but don't count on it necessarily. But a mentor is a mentor. A mentor is like a coach. And what they're going to help you do, usually within a fixed time frame, understand where you're at, where you want to get, and have some type of conversation or relationship with you to nudge you down that path. You need to show your mentor that you're not just there listening for 3 or 6 months, that you're actually doing some work because it's a relationship and you're actually in the driver's seat, not the mentor. The boss relationship, the boss is in the driver's seat because they delegate, they dictate in some ways, they kind of align you to the business. The mentor, it's the opposite. My mentees schedule the meetings with me. They accommodate me. They're the ones that take notes. They're the ones that prepare. Because my job is to give them the best of me, to bring my knowledge to them, to care, to think deeply about stuff, and sometimes to connect them with other resources, which could be people or information or books or things like that out there. A mentor is incredibly important for your development. Right now, most of your mentors have probably been your teachers, but when you get out of the the school environment, your mentors are going to be people who are on LinkedIn, who have profiles you can reach out to. I reached out to a few just this past week. I'm trying to build some new relationships to help me with my continued career development. All right. Does anyone know what a sponsor is versus a mentor? Over here, can we pass the mic over here, please?
A sponsor is someone that's going to advocate for your career growth behind closed doors. So that would probably look like somewhere that's 2 levels above you. So not your manager or boss, but like a director. They're the ones saying, yeah, this person needs a raise or this person needs to move up to a senior role. That would be a sponsor.
That's killer definition. I don't think I could have stated that better. Yeah, killer definition. Nothing to add to that. That's perfect. Except it's important to have a sponsor because if you want to do big stuff, no, that's all your thunder. It's not mine. Yeah, that's not mine. That's all your thunder. That's great. You should really understand that because when you are frustrated that doors aren't opening for you, you don't necessarily need a mentor. You need a sponsor. You need someone who's going to advocate for you and open the door. And it is behind closed doors, which is amazing. If you feel like your career development isn't happening, it's because those decisions are made behind closed doors. If you don't have good relationships, if you're kind of a jerk sometimes, people will recognize that, right? But if you're killing it, people recognize that too. And they will talk about that behind closed doors. But like Germain has seen that I've advocated for certain things for UX programs. And in some companies, when we didn't have a sponsor, they just simply couldn't happen. And I've had many bosses, even as a manager and director up to VP, had many bosses. Depending on the boss, you may or may not have a sponsor. And sometimes it has to be the person above your boss. And you have to handle that delicately so it doesn't look like you're going around someone And that's where the soft skills really matter a lot. Sponsors will open doors for you. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. But be very clear about what the difference is between a mentor, it's more like your coach. They will help you more in real time. They'll help you get better during the season, like a football coach, right? They'll help you get better during that season. And they're very kind of time boxed in a sense. A sponsor who can help you in your career level up. A boss has very different responsibilities. And then you have your colleagues and stuff. So just be clear about these different roles. We talked about celebrating growth, also track your progress. So we'll go into the next couple slides just to show you how you track your progress now. And if you keep doing check-ins with yourself every 6 months to a year, you can actually track your trending. So you maybe this year you're okay at something, and 3 years from now you're an expert. Man, open a bottle of champagne for that. Or it could be non-alcoholic, doesn't matter. But open some bottle of something and celebrate it, okay? So this is our skills assessment template. This is literally the one I used for many years back in 2010 up until about 2016 or so. Once I developed a management team under me, I kind of asked them to do this with their teams. And it's a practice that is unbelievable. I do think this could be a good class assignment actually to develop a skills assessment template. And what you do is you list out all the techniques under research and design and others, and all the tools under those, and just make this master list. And by the way, sometimes these things are going to change over time. Like eye tracking was on our list. We've never really done much of it. We did it at one point. We just found it was too, I don't know what the word is, like nerdy. And it wasn't actually giving us the results we really needed for the problems we needed to solve. So we didn't do it because it wasn't relevant. There are content management systems and development languages and things like that that have changed over the years. So you can evolve this over the years. In tools, no one uses Photoshop in our organization anymore. We also don't even use Sketch anymore. We're all on Figma and Axure. So it can evolve. What you do is you come up with some type of way of coding your level of expertise. We went 0, 1, 2, 3, kept it super simple. Because what if it's a 10-point scale? Are you really a 7 or are you really an 8? Let it go, guys. So 0 means I've never done this. Maybe I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is or how to do it. 1, in this case, means I've at least done this technique or used this tool once. So I have some degree of familiarity. If somebody guides me, I could get better at it. 2 means you're solid, that if your boss says, I need you to do this technique or use this tool for a project, you say, sure, you can do it. Okay, real simple, right? That's kind of the litmus test for it. And then 3 is I'm an expert, I can teach others. Okay, simple. I just think that makes life a lot easier. So this time slice was maybe in 1 year. Let's say it's 2023. Next year, you copy the column, you paste it next to it, and you update your numbers. It's very much like tracking your fitness levels at the gym. Body fat percentage, how much weight you can push, all those kinds of things, how far you can run. So these are your metrics for you. What I also tend to do is I tend to bold the areas. So some of these numbers are bolded, the areas where I want to focus on right now. That ties directly into that thing we called a detailed development plan towards seniority, number 2 here. So I go, stakeholder interviews, user interviews. I want to get more solid at that. So I'm going to find opportunities to specifically do that. Task flows, sitemaps, wireframes. Just, I need to do it at least once so I can take my 0s and make them 1s. So go from 0 to 1 is really easy. Going from like a 2 to 3 is more difficult. Okay. Does this make sense? Has anyone ever done this before? No. Okay. I hope I've added some value today. Yes, Quinn. Oh, you have, sorry. Good. This is great. Maybe it's something you can share with your colleagues. That's awesome. Mic up. Yep. There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, so I have different categories for improvements, and then I have, let's say, health, and in there I have like different goals. At the end of the year, I check to see like where I am and where I want to be. And then so next year comes, I'll either modify that or I'll have the same goals and I'll just keep working on it. Like I have like health, education, I have like personal developments, like people, relationships, because I think that's really important too,
Yeah.
like friendship, families, like do I want to spend time more with friends and family? How do I do that? Right? So I have to put that down. I have a lot of things I want to do. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you should never have a goal of being an expert at everything. Like we're human beings, right? We're not cars coming off an assembly line where you've got to meet some quality control across the board and everything needs to be identical. Like we have hearts, we have emotions, we have personalities. So when you're doing this, focus on the things that reflect who you want to be and work on that versus trying to compete with somebody else. Okay, I will say that I tended to score highest across the whole matrix, but that was because I love this work and wanting to influence others and create an oasis for other people, because we didn't have this in the early part of our career. We weren't parts of UX teams. We were just soloists. So it's nice to create an environment for other people to do that. And I personally felt that the better I can get at everything, that when I become a manager, I'll have credibility and respect, and they will recognize that I'm not just being a manager for the glory of it, which ain't that glorious, to be honest. I'm doing it because I love what we do and I love my people and I want to create a space for them. So it was natural that I kind of ranked pretty high at this stuff. But if you're a researcher, I don't care about your skill. You shouldn't care about your design skills. It's perfectly fine. It's okay. And likewise, as a UI designer, you might go, I want to be familiar with research. But I don't necessarily want to be an expert. So let this reflect you as a personality. Okay, role, very different, unique. All right. The other thing I promised, we have a little asterisk there that I'll show you is what a career planning template looks like. So this is literally the career planning template I use with my team. Before we start talking about the future, we talk about the past first. And this feels good. Feels really good because it lets you know what you've done, what you've accomplished, how much you've grown, how awesome you are. You talk about highlights. You don't go into all the weeds. You talk about your highlights and you summarize your academic accomplishments as well as your work accomplishments. This is a beautiful thing. It's great. It's only feel good. Then you do your skills assessment, that one we just looked at. You figure out your areas to grow. And you can then map that out to your development plan. Focus primarily on 1 year, because that's all within grasp. It's right within reach. So think about projects and work and not maybe areas to learn, to be trained on that support where you want to grow in your 1 year plan. And then start to think, sketch out what 3 years looks like, and 5 years beyond is directional. Okay. You may not actually get there, but you might learn stuff along the way. Like Jermaine, I think you and I've talked a lot. You thought about becoming a product manager, right? Product manager. Where are your feelings now about product manager and all those years? 12 years.
I still like the idea of becoming a product manager. For me, it's all about opportunity, trying to find the best opportunity to move into that space is kind of why I haven't done it all out and kind of went into it. So it's more of an opportunity thing for me at this point. If I find like the right opportunity that will allow me to kind of grow and actually go where I want to go there, then I would probably take it. So it's all about opportunity for me at this point.
Yeah. Awesome. Let me close it out, and that way we can take the last 10 minutes or so and do some more Q&A. I see a couple of questions online here. Some resources that my team provides publicly are the Ascend UX podcast. You can learn so many great things from this podcast because we really target an audience of folks that are usually students or people who are transitioning over to UX. So they're super, super relevant topics there. I know there's some questions around interviewing and career path and all that stuff. I promise there's an episode out there for you. And it's led by Ayan Bihi, who is our manager of UX design based in Paris. And the early episodes were actually led by Evan Sunwall as well, who is now, he left my team a couple years ago. I'm proud to say, because he's now an analyst at Nielsen Norman Group, which you guys should be familiar with. Yeah. Actually, I don't know his exact title, but he's a badass. Like, he is one of the most analytical guys I know. And he's doing some really cool research reports, and he's on YouTube now. And I'm so happy to see his growth. It's amazing. And the other one is the Send blog, which we just launched this year. There's a few articles out there right now. There's going to be a couple articles published every month on various topics. And this is more topical, the current stuff that's happening. We have a topic on AI that I published, another one on doing conversational UIs. There's a number of other topics out there. Okay. That's it. I'm going to leave you with this thought that don't focus on the outcome, focus on the process. That's even what I do when I make pizza. Just focus on the process. I never focused on trying to make thousands of pizzas or having a pizza persona or talk about pizza one day. I focused on making pizzas. My first ones were meh. And then all kinds of beautiful things happened in my life as I kept going down this path. So focus on that process, getting in your flow, finding your creativity, taking care of having a healthy ego, having these conversations with yourself, and building out your community. All right, now you have information. Please don't all hit me up at once. By the way, candidates do that a lot, and it's very endearing until you have like 50 of them hitting you all up on LinkedIn at the same time. It's really tough sometimes because you want to do good by them. You know that they're working hard to get where they are, but it's sometimes hard to field it all. But QR code will get you to my contact card through application of Blink. You can also text me or email me. All right. Be kind with my contact information. How do people contact you, Germain?
LinkedIn is probably the best way.
Germain Preston.
Germain Preston, yeah, it's pretty easy to find. We can share my information with Liz. So
yeah,
but yeah, definitely LinkedIn is the best way. And that Ravi will probably agree with this. We love helping people level up their careers. So this is a passion for both of us. For one, it's something we all enjoy. So definitely feel free to reach out. So
that's the end of the talk. Let's do some QA.
You want to answer the online ones? Or
yeah, I think so.
That's the one I was just about to.
Take a
So we had the AI question.
Let's go with that one.
Yep.
So as technology like AI continue to evolve, how do you see the role of UX changing?
Do you want to go or me? I can go. I'm giving a talk in 2 weeks about AI and UX for Human Factors International. So take a look at my LinkedIn. I'll post a link to it over there. That's specifically what I'll be talking about. So the role of UX changing, it's interesting because there's 2 angles on that. How do we leverage AI tools to work differently? Now that's happening very naturally, like tools like Miro and Figma and Photoshop and other tools have AI embedded in it, right? To help you generate images, do card sorting, affinity diagramming, develop content, instantly. This is amazing, guys. It's unbelievable. I actually produced a story about the evolution of our product software from where we used to be to where we're going to go in a few years with images and an entire script. And I recorded a video and I shared it with my team. And it's all AI generated, except for my voice. I was just reading from the script that ChatGPT gave me and the images I got from DALL-E. So the reason I did it was because I knew it would be a really cool thing to inspire my team. They may not agree. They might be like, oh, my boss is so corny, but it's okay. I felt like it was an idea I wanted to explore. And so I did it. And it both showed them a way to use AI, but also gave us something that we could collectively imagine together of the evolution of our products and some storytelling to connect with people to their hearts, right? So that's one thing. Our tools, you know, like I mentioned, Miro, these other ones, it's gonna evolve the way we work. You just have to embrace it, period. The other part is the software and the websites and the things that we're designing. We can embed AI into the experience. I think of it like a palette of colors as an artist. You have all your standard colors, and then you get that magic color, you know, the metallic iridescent one that glows and it does all these special things. So it's one of the things that we can embed into our user experience to supercharge experience. So all the ways you guys are using, benefiting from AI today, think about that when you're designing, like, how can you give that magic back to your end users? So I just embrace it, but not everything can be a chatbot, by the way, okay, please? There's other ways of doing really cool stuff. Humanizing language, I think, is an incredible thing. Personalizing the experiences more and doing it more dynamically. We have a really cool chat interface that we did embed into our products that reads all of our customer support, well, not customer support, it's kind of like product documentation from our customer support community, ingests it into the large language model, and then we use a chat interface. So when someone is having a challenge using our user interface, like God forbid that would ever happen, you know, but it happens, we're not perfect, then they can just chat and the AI will bring the answer to the forefront and a link directly to the document that it got it from. So you can go a little deeper. That's pretty cool. Couldn't have done that before. Your thoughts about AI affecting UX?
It's a very interesting thing, a question coming from Google, right? We all know Google is kind of the innovator of a lot of these AI technologies that we're looking at these days. But I think one of the more important things that I've been talking to people on my team. So I have a PhD AI researcher on my UX team that I work with. And we always talk about how AI is not going to take our jobs, right? So I think that's the one thing that a lot of us are concerned about is AI being something that can do our job for us. So there are stuff that Robbie's talking about that AI can actually do, like design a website. That's perfect, right? I don't know how many more times I want to lay out a new website with a button and a hamburger menu at the top right? Like that stuff is fine. AI can do that stuff. But what AI is never going to be able to do is be creative, right? So what we bring to the table is creativity. AI does not do a good job with that, right? It actually can't be creative. It's only as good as the data that's fed to it. These are real things, right? So I don't think it's gonna ever take our job. So when there's jumps that UX designers, that creative people do that help us innovate and do new things in this world, right? AI is never gonna be able to do that. It's only trained on data. So for us to make these jumps in innovation, it takes us taking information from all over the place, right, and be able to piece it together and come up with these new ideas. So I don't think we're going to be impacted that much from that side of our careers. I feel like UX will always be something that's needed within technology. So I'm not one of those people that's actually scared of AI. You know, you hear people talk about they're scared of AI taking their jobs. I don't think that's one of those things that's going to happen to the UX career. But it is going to actually make our lives easier. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that can speed up my flow using these AI tools, and I think that stuff is actually really cool. Like how Robbie said, you can generate scripts and all these things. So that stuff I think is pretty amazing. You'll see we actually were doing some experiments with Figma to generate stuff like graphics and things like that, like button styles, all these different things that as a designer, after you've done it a couple times, you don't really want to create another button again, right? So it's like those things I think is really cool that because they actually really speed up our flow, can actually help us be more efficient designers and get things done faster. So I'm a pretty big fan of it at that level, but I don't think it's going to take any of our jobs away. So I think, next 10, 20 years. Now, what happens when quantum computing comes into the play and all that stuff? I don't know. It may be a little bit harder for us, but I think, over the next 10, 20 years, we should be fine in the space as UX designers. So
Yeah, I mean, accounting software has existed for a long time, right? TurboTax, right? But there's still CPAs out there. So this is a good question for us, is how can we leverage the tools but then also distinguish ourselves. Because AI doesn't really do strategy. You know, AI doesn't understand the human elements. I mean, AI is, especially generative AI, is working off of models, right? And it hallucinates sometimes too. I know. So it's interesting, right? And so that's where you need the human element. So how do you position yourself? How do you reposition yourself in the world of AI? Thank God for this, because it challenges the box and the fixed mindset that we're in right now. And it challenges us to grow. It's only going to keep doing this throughout your careers. I promise. I mean, I'm totally dating myself right now. There was no internet at one point, guys, you know? That changed my career. So I was a print designer when I started out, you know, so there you go. Look, so I think we're at time. There was one or two more questions, but I mean, we have a few minutes. There's a really good one around interviewing, I think.
Yeah, we had one more online. So because there's so many applicants, can you describe the process of how you decide who gets interviews?
Yeah.
When it comes to viewing so many resumes / portfolios, what stands out to you?
Do you hit or me?
I just say one quick thing.
Yeah.
Your portfolio is probably everyone knows is so important. Because like Robbie said, he had what, 200, 250 resumes, LinkedIn profiles, portfolios he was looking at. So you got to think about it. How do you stand out in the crowd, right? And then usually it's going to come down to your creativity. Oftentimes we rely on templates and stuff like that to get our portfolios done, which is fine. But one way to stand out from that, right, is to have an extremely creative portfolio that if somebody like Robbie is sitting there looking at all these, over the day, like yours is the one that catches their eye. So I think really understanding the experience of somebody like himself that's looking through all this stuff. And this is how you're going to get their eye, by having something that is probably just really crazy, that looks really good. Whatever the style that you choose to go with, it's really important to understand what you can bring to the table to get the eyeballs, right? Because it's really hard with you. I've been in this situation too. It's really tough looking through resumes and portfolios. It's like it gets very mundane and you just kind of like going through the process. So as soon as you see that one, it's like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Oh my God, they use this crazy type. Oh, they did this crazy thing, right? That type of stuff actually really matters for somebody like Robbie, because he's seeing so many of them. You need something to stand out. So I'll let you get into
Yeah, and
that.
it is a complex thing, right? Because you have to distinguish yourself, because when you have a couple hundred resumes, I mean, you have to sort through that. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts. So let's say you have distinguished yourself. It's going to be because great storytelling on your portfolio, right? Because we want case studies. That's the standard, right? It's case study. Walk me through it. Tell me how you think. Show me how you actually validated your work. You did some upfront research. Don't just show me the end product, but tell me the whole story. Some of these portfolios, they cut short, before I see the end product, or they don't set up the context. The storytelling isn't there. So storytelling is really critical. Quality of design, obviously, is very critical. You're a designer. So we're going to look for that to a degree, but your content is probably more important. You could have pretty minimalist design, depending on the role you're going for. It's your content. Start with your storytelling, get across your personality, your expertise, your inquisitiveness, your curiosity, your interest in the organization that you're trying to support. You gotta get all that stuff across. So that's the portfolio. Easy thing, guys. Go do some espionage. Go search for people's portfolios. Go to LinkedIn and look for junior UX designers and look at their portfolios. It's not actually that complicated. If you're not familiar, then you're making an excuse. You can easily go out there and see who your competition is. If you haven't done that, you're starting, a few steps behind. So similarly for your resume, standard for resume, 1 page, especially if you're more junior in your career. It makes sense. You don't have that much experience. We don't like reading bullet points. We really don't like reading bullet points. It's the same stuff. We read it over and over and over. So a little trick that I recommend, I've been doing this for a very long time, top of your resume, under your name and your contact information, And usually I put a title to kind of disposition who I am. For many years, I put Ravi Singh, UX architect, because that was a little different. And I wanted to say, I'm just like a technical architect, but I'm doing it for UX, not UX designer, which sounded a level below. So I really cared about that title. It wasn't my job title. It was a title, it's the way I wanted you to see me. So I'm starting my storytelling right from the beginning. First thing I do under that, an about section. Don't even need a label about. Just take one sentence, maximum two. Describe who you were, kind of says who you are, and where you want to go, what you're looking for. If you can structure it that way, I don't need to read the rest of the resume, pretty much. Then I'll take a look at your education, look at your tools, and I'll be like, yeah, check, 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 check. And I'll look at the experience you've had, but keep it brief, keep it concise, but keep it meaningful. If your experience includes KPIs, things like measurable things you did that changed something, we increased page views, we increased e-commerce, we decreased task failures, all that stuff, I go, this person gets it. Because if they can communicate that well in a resume, they'll be able to communicate well in our organization. And your resume should look good. It should look modern. You know, if it's one column Times New Roman, pass. I'm not even gonna read it. I hate to be harsh about it, but I have 200 more to go, you know? So the way the process usually works, again, so you don't take it personally, is that talent acquisition in most companies will be the first ones to look at your resume. They're gonna filter it for the hiring manager. Because imagine you have to manage an entire team and you have 3 posts out there and each post has 200 resumes. As a hiring manager, that's gonna take all of your time. And now you can't serve the business. So it's usually gonna go through HR first. They're gonna filter down. They might use some tools to get through the keywords and stuff. If you try to game the system and put a lot of keywords in there, we're gonna notice. So really use keywords intentionally, represent who you really are, and you'll get the job, you'll get matched the job you really need to be in. So they do it first, then that goes to the hiring manager, and sometimes we'll divvy it up. So that's what I've done. I actually split it up between, we kind of, 3 of us, we split up in thirds and went through that. Then we determined who was gonna be qualified for a phone screen. So we gotta go through it that way. Like, we don't have hours to interview everyone equally. So it's difficult, I'm not gonna lie about it, all right? If you get through the phone screen and you get an interview, feel good. Feel really good about that. Now it's your job to lose, not to win, because you're already there for an interview. We think you can do the job, all right? So that's where practice, read, go to Google, read some like interviewing tips. It's all out there. This is not a mystery on how to interview well, okay? And they'll tell you everything you need to know. And we have a podcast on this too. So we'll plug our podcast again. So on and so forth. And then we down select with very long interviews where we'll have multiple people interview one-on-one. And then we usually will do like a design challenge or a research challenge. That's a 1 hour session where in real time we'll work through a problem together. Now, if you get a job with us, you know you've joined the A team. You should be very proud. Everyone else has been through it, and you can relax and just do good work because we'll onboard you and kind of take your time, build you up into the team. So I want to give a little extra detail because I know this is really critical for where you guys are in your career, but also listen to the podcast and say.
Oh, I got one to add about your portfolio. And I know a lot of you probably are putting like school projects on your portfolio. Make sure that you highlight that in the because it's like as you're reading it as somebody that's sipping through this stuff, if I don't know if it's a school project versus a real thing, it just kind of makes things cloudy for the person that's reading and trying to understand your work. So like make sure you're as clear as possible of like the context of the work. It's really important because oftentimes if I'm hiring somebody for a role, I'm gonna expect them to have those kind of projects. But if it's not clear, then I can't put you in the right category, if you will, to understand, oh, well, you'll be perfect for this type of role versus this type of role. So it's really, really important to be clear about that. And it's also from that perspective, sometimes, you know, you pick up on people trying to make it seem like they're not doing a school project and make it seem real. And again, it just comes off as kind of dishonest. So And oftentimes they kind of just throw you away if they can't understand, if that project is a school related or a boot camp or something like that. So really important to be clear there. So.
Any other questions? Are we good? Well, cool. Hey, thank you guys for letting us speak for 2+ hours. Wow, we did it. We did it, guys. So just thank you guys so much for giving us some time to connect with you all. And I hope this has been valuable. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.